planes. Well, the state of Pennsylvania is slated to get about $10 billion in stimulus. But when will these funds actually take hold and start to help a state that could possibly lose thousands of jobs if General Motors goes bankrupt? Representative Joe Sestak, Democrat of Pennsylvania, joining us live from Philadelphia. Welcome, Congressman.
Thanks, Liz. Good to be back.
I first have to ask you, because you are a retired three-star admiral in the U.S. Navy, what is your take on the Navy's actions with the Somali pirates yesterday? We all were so impressed and just couldn't believe what happened.
Yes. It shows what you can still do with our defense, even against pirates, never mind against navies. First, our commander-in-chief, I think he took a safe, deliberate approach to this. He also gave the rules of engagement so that there were pre-planned responses for the captain, a commander on a ship, to make an instantaneous decision for force to be used. This was extremely well done.
I mean, we just were so thrilled. And look, the Navy SEALs pulled it off perfectly with such precision. I'm telling you, I'm getting all these Twitters from people who say that's what they do, and they do it right. But, you know, there's so much discussion about the defense budget, and Robert Gates came out with the defense budget, and some people were saying, oh, you're weakening the military by doing this. Others said, hey, wait a minute, we're modernizing the military. How should we view this?
It's a great question. If you notice, just 2 days before this incident occurred, Secretary of Defense Gates said he is going to move more monies, actually increase the defense budget 4%, and move funding into a littoral combat ship. That's a very small ship the Navy is just about to begin its first purchase of. This is exactly the type of vessel we need now down there, not another vessel that costs $1 or $2 billion. Second, he said he's going to move funding into unmanned air vehicles. The Navy is about to put out there an unmanned air vehicle that could look down and fly 24 hours and see who's who in the zoo. And someone is beginning to intercept the merchantman, direct the helicopter off littoral combat ship to go there. That's the type of knowledge-based transformation we actually need.
Interesting. Do you think the action from this weekend, I mean, and you got a consensus here at Fox Business that it was absolutely the right thing to do. What happens now with the pirates? Do they back off, as you know, we would hope they would, to say, oh, okay, the U.S. is playing for keeps here, or does it embolden them somehow? What do you think will happen now with these pirate attacks?
I actually think this will serve both as a deterrent, but even our Vice Admiral in charge of the Fifth Fleet said earlier today he expects to see some increase in violence by them. That is why, if there's anything important our Navy should do, is to put more forces down there. If we can't stamp out pirates, what is our Navy for? It's interesting, Liz. Our Constitution actually says maintain navies, raise armies when you need them.
Yeah.
We got to have the navies out there because 99% of all volume of our commerce goes by the seas.
But do we
That's
fight
why
this,
we have to stamp them
Representative? Do we
out.
fight this out on the high seas, the buccaneers there? It's awfully difficult. Or do we start going after them on land, on their land?
Actually, we need to do both. United Nations, even the United Nations passed a resolution recently that said action against pirates ashore is permitted. And so we need to squash them at sea, and our Navy can do that with the right amount of force. So we have 12 ships in the Persian Gulf. Let's move some of them where we're not fighting a war down to this Gulf of Aden. Second, we should be able to do two things ashore. If we have to interdict selectively, do so. But you know as well as I do that this piracy is the result of Somalia's chaos that could not enforce its fishing boundaries. And so other nations came in. And when I used to go through those waters, I saw thousands of tuna jump out of the water. Those countries went in, decimated the fishing industry there. And so these clans that were fishing clans have turned for one of several primary purposes, piracy. So the nations has to solve the source of it, not just by interdicting ashore, but by getting their economy going. You know as well as I do, economics is the foundation of everything.
Absolutely, but part of the economics of this is we saw a lot of CEOs of shipping companies paying off millions of dollars in these ransoms. Was that a huge mistake? I mean, obviously hindsight is 20/20. You don't want to endanger people's lives, but did that embolden these pirates? Hey, we're getting money. This is like shooting fish in a barrel.
To some degree, it did. But on the other hand, they made a very conscious decision that putting armed guards or arming their own crews on these ships would rise the cost of liability by the insurance industries many-fold more. The real instrument, and I believe this firmly as a naval officer, is our Navy. Our Navy was sent to the Straits of Malacca to shut them down in 1962 when pirates were there. We should have been shutting this down over the past year.
Yes,
and I firmly believe we can do it relatively quickly.
Let's hope so. Let me move on to General Motors. Word is that the president and the administration pushing General Motors closer to bankruptcy. There's some really serious talk, if you believe the papers. Your state alone would stand possibly to lose, there have been some reports that we read, economic reports, 120,000 auto-related jobs. Do we need to see a General Motors go bankrupt, or how do you fall on which side of this very tough discussion?
3 years ago, in normal times, I would have said, if bankruptcy is what it takes, it should happen by itself. Today, I believe that bankruptcy and the threat of it is the only hammer that we have over bondholders holding $27 billion and the UAW having $20 billion that it's supposed to get from GM. And neither of them are willing to take equity in the company and share risk. If it takes us into bankruptcy, so be it. Doesn't mean that the United States will sit back and not guarantee that these automobiles will have warrants, as the president has said. 1 out of every 10 jobs in America that's a manufacturing job is tied directly to automobile industry. So therefore, if we do go to bankruptcy, and I would support it, that's what it takes to get the bondholders and the unions there, then it must be one that's managed. And I know, Liz, that's easier said than done. But if we don't have some sort of hammer to force them to come together, we can't just be giving them monies. We must force them, and bankruptcy is the final tool to make that happen.
So you're willing to take that tough love?
Absolutely. We must go to that step, because otherwise we're just there betting on the come that goodwill will bring them together. And that plan that they gave us was not good enough to keep them viable. There is not enough shared risk between labor, employer, and with the bondholders. And I strongly feel all must share this risk. And mind you, that the president made very clear that this industry, at least GM, because he put Fiat over there with Chrysler,
sure,
he is going to survive in some form. And the retooling of it must be part of that viability plan, because we don't want to come out of here with a welfare system, but a viable industry that, again, keeps 1 out of 10 manufacturing jobs alive in America on a competitive basis.
Representative, before we let you go, I've got to ask you about the stimulus plan. The state of Pennsylvania is supposed to get about $10 billion. I know it's the governor who gets to decide where it goes, but we're hearing reports that some money, say, for example, in Ohio, is going toward highway studies versus actual highway building or bridge building. What do you think is the best way to put money to work in your state?
You know, there was language in the stimulus bill that said as long as the money is committed, and committed meant that the state is committed towards executing it. I don't think it was strong enough language. That said, Liz, you have heard me say before, I've never felt this was a stimulus bill as much as a job hemorrhaging bill. So I'm looking more at the tax rebates that it went out 1 April. I'm looking more at the $11 billion that went out of Medicaid. And so those types of stop the hemorrhaging of jobs, okay, I never felt you'd get stimulus to the very end of this year, to the beginning of next year, and that's what the modeling shows. Am I discouraged it hasn't been to more shovel-ready? Yes. Okay. But as long as this year we get through, I think we'll be fine, and the stimulus will kick in next year. Representative
Sestak, it's a pleasure to have you, and from your Naval Admiral perspective, it's so valuable. We appreciate you coming on.
Glad to be back aboard.
Anytime. Congressman Joe Sestak, Democrat from Pennsylvania. We'll see you next time. And, hey, he was good luck for the markets. While he was talking, the markets turned positive.